Probably most of you who have never been in a closed class before know something now of the nature of this work. And if so, you have realized two things. One is that there is that which we call the letter of truth. The foundational understanding or truth that can be intellectually known, can be intellectually stated. It gives us a foundation upon which to stand. It's not a very simple thing to grasp the letter of the message of the infinite way. In fact, it's a very difficult thing. And the reason is that we use the language, a great deal of the language of the Bible, and some of the language of metaphysics, and yet we mean nothing of the Bible as it has ordinarily been taught in theological days or orthodox days. And so many misunderstand the letter of truth in the infinite way because they believe they understand the passages they hear from the Bible, and they do understand it from their old standpoint, but not from this new. And in the same way, there is a good deal of familiar metaphysical language in this, and yet there are very few points on which we agree with any metaphysical teaching of which I know anything. Very few points on which we agree. And that is the thing that students do not readily grasp because they hear a statement and they know that language, but they have accepted an interpretation which is not meant at all in the infinite way. And it is for that reason that I have rarely met anyone who has studied less than 3 or 4 or 5 years who knows actually what the letter, what the basic foundation of the infinite way is. It isn't easy. You either have some orthodox religion in your background or you have some metaphysical religion in your background, and in either case you are reading through your understanding the words that I'm speaking or writing. And it takes a long time. It took me a long time to separate the message of the infinite way from my own background, because I too was thinking at first in terms of a language with which I was familiar, and then finding that I didn't mean the things that I was saying. Now, in addition to the letter of truth, there is a part of this teaching that consists of probably, well, I should say at least 3/4 of our work. And that has nothing to do with the letter at all. It has to do with the actual experience of the Christ. It has to do with an actual experience of God. Now, the value of the correct letter is that it clears the way for the experience to take place, an experience that very seldom can take place until there is a correct background of the letter. Or, might say it this way, there are students who have had the actual experience before they had the letter. And in those cases, they had even more difficulty afterward because they had so much of the spirit that the letter became unimportant. And when it did, eventually that spirit dropped away through having no foundation. It gave way to a blind faith. Very, very often, when people have the Spirit and not a letter, they will go off into a blind faith. That is found, it's a very common experience in religious literature, where people have had the actual God experience or Christ experience, and then have so misinterpreted through their background that they go off into a blind faith or a blind worship of something separate and apart. Now, it is an interesting thing to watch not only our own unfoldment, but the unfoldment of those about us. And I hope that many of you felt the experience that took place this afternoon between 5 and 5:30, because whether or not you felt it, you're going to feel the effects of it for a long time to come. I was meditating, and I had spent, after a half-hour swim, I had spent the rest of the afternoon in meditation and Bible study. And it was between, just a little after 5, when all of a sudden a feeling came over me, or took place within me, that was as if we here united in one, as if instead of a 100-piece orchestra, we all of a sudden became a symphony orchestra, and not plural, but singular. Not many, but one. It was as if all of a sudden this class of students disappeared, or let us say this group of students, and a class emerged, just a unit, a one. And the vision that I saw was this: at any time now, this group of students, or call it this class, could unite any place for metaphysical work, prayer, communion, spiritual work, for the meeting of any problem that they would care to come together for or about, or they could break up into groups of 2 or 5 or 8 or 6 or 9 for any purpose of prayer, meditation, communion, or the meeting of a problem for any one or for any 2 or group. And you would find that this has happened, that you would have the full flow of the Spirit. It wouldn't be a person praying. It would be the Spirit itself acting upon the problem. You see, it's one thing for us as individuals to be consciously one with God, and that Spirit takes over. And something like that happens in a meditation where one here makes the contact with God, and all out here feel it. But what I'm speaking of, and that which took place this afternoon, is an entirely different experience. It isn't where the Spirit comes to one and all feel it. It is where the Spirit comes and acts in and through all as one. So that if we now were to meditate or take up some healing work, it wouldn't be me, a practitioner or a teacher, conducting a meditation or healing group with a class here to help. It wouldn't be that. It would have been last night. had we all agreed that there was some person requiring our help, and we wanted to unite here for the purpose of bringing out the healing, the way it would have been in effect would have been that my contact with the Spirit would have touched you, and then there would have been a union in that Spirit, and the work would have been done. That couldn't happen tonight. Tonight, if we were to meditate for any purpose, there would not be one person conducting and the others following. There would not be one person opening themselves to the Spirit and the others feeling it. Tonight, there is such a oneness of spirit, such a union here, that the one Spirit would operate equally in and through each of us, so that if we gave now a treatment to someone or some condition, it would be the one Spirit giving the treatment through or as the consciousness of us here. And if a little group over here tomorrow, or another group here, or another group here the next day, were to meet, that same Spirit in its fullness would be operating through those few. Now you watch this after this class, that wherever any two of you, or 3 or 5 or a dozen, get together, your meditations will be entirely different than anything you have ever experienced before, and you will find it possible to conduct a healing work. Where any one of you, but more especially any 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, want to get together for meditation, you will find that the Spirit is there in the midst of you to perform that function. It will no longer be an individual. It will no longer be one person open to the Spirit and the others receiving it. It will be the entire group, whether it's 2 or 22, receiving the fullness of the one and same Spirit. Now, it was during that, it wasn't a half-hour period, it was within a 15-minute period, that this entire thing took place, and this union was so complete that there was no longer a room full of students. There was a single class. You follow that in the case of an orchestra. When it first meets and says, let's be an orchestra, there may be 100 pieces there, and there are 100 men with 100 instruments. But after the conductor has worked with them for a few weeks or a few months, the strings are all one unit, and probably the brass is one unit, and the wind instruments is one unit. And then the conductor continues to work, and the first thing you know, there are no strings, and there is no brass, and there is no wind. There is just an orchestra. One tune, one melody, one song. And so it is, where 2 or more are gathered together in my name, the first thing that happens is that whoever is the one in contact or at one or unioned one with the Spirit, they bring through that Spirit to all the others. But in a case, as has happened here, that no longer takes place. The one Spirit is operative and operating as the consciousness of each individual. And so it would be, whether there were 2 of us or 20 of us gathered together, the fullness of that Spirit would be operating. And you watch this now in your meditations, in your meetings, wherever you meet, or should you be called on for healing work with each other. Everyone in this group should be able to help everyone else, because for a long time to come we continue to have problems no matter how much the Spirit has come through. And it is for that reason that once in a while we are not able to meet our own and turn to each other. And so the benefit of a group like this is this: you are not organized in any human way. You have no ties upon each other and no memberships, but you have that one bond in the Spirit, so that if anyone asked for help, any one or dozen of the others should be ready and willing and able to take over and help anyone else. That is the vision that I have that will ultimately be, as you have seen it in the front of all the pamphlets, a spiritual union that has no physical formation, no human duties to each other, no human obligations to each other, no human memberships and no human dues, but a spiritual bond, so that if anyone anywhere in the world should say help, that any one or all the others would say, I am standing by with you. And what would be meant is this, that as you will feel before this evening is over, the complete Spirit that is settled upon you here would be with you if you were alone or if there were two of you. In other words, this is not easy to explain. It is as if the full Spirit were flowing through each one, and yet not separately, all in one and as one. Now, once before, an experience along this line took place in San Francisco. The class book is called Metaphysical Notes, and in that you will find a chapter called Ordination. And it happened very much like this, except that it was 3 o'clock in the morning and I was sleeping. But I was awakened out of the sleep and told to get up and sit in a chair, which I did. And then this voice spoke to me for quite a few minutes, and then said, now sit at the desk and write. And then it repeated word for word what it had said to me. And what it said to me you will find in that book on the chapter called Ordination. And when it was through, it said, give this to the class tonight. And I did. And the very moment that it was over, there was a silence as if the whole air had gone dead. And then each one got up and walked away and went out, and not even a good night. It was just one of those occasions when the Spirit, the visitation of the Spirit, was so powerful that nothing could be added to it. Well, that was a similar experience. It's the second time now in all these years that something of that nature has happened, where the entire class had been brought together in a union. Now, that will explain more clearly than all the lessons what I mean by the message of the infinite way. And when I say to you that the infinite way is not so much a teaching as it is an experience. It is the experience of God itself. And there isn't any reason why everyone who is at all attuned to the Spirit cannot live the experience of God. And of course that's what we are seeking to do in our work here, and seeking to bring out in each other. A teaching is of very, very little importance if there isn't the Spirit that is with it. So you'll notice tonight in our meditations, and some of you may have felt this experience this afternoon, and as the days go by, after the class more especially, as you sit in meditation and assimilate, you will know what took place. we understand each other better than we ever did before. I have never felt that we here in Honolulu ever really understood each other very well in this message of the infinite way. There were very, very, very few students here there were many who caught a glimpse of the message of the infinite way, but there were very, very few who understood what was behind it or what there was in each of us as individuals. There hasn't been a coalescing, there hasn't been a union as there has been in other places, but I'm sure you'll find that we will understand each other better after today. Now, yes, with it came this reminder that we have a saying here in America that in union there is strength. And of course we have all learned that that is not true. There is no strength in physical union. I don't care how great the numbers are. There can be 48 states all unioned together, and then they could split in half, and half be on one side and half be on the other, and it's even possible that they could split into 3 or 4 parts. There has been a union of Great Britain, and it has split into splinters. There is no such thing as strength in union when you think of union numerically or physically. 12 giants can be downed with just one bullet. There's no strength that way. There's no strength in an atomic bomb either. They're proving that every day now. Each one's afraid of it. Now, there's no strength in it. It's a weakness. But there is strength in a spiritual union. First of all, there is a strength when any individual becomes in union with God, at one with God. When any individual becomes consciously one with God, there is a strength that not all the world of error could overcome. But when 2 or more individuals are joined in a spiritual union, in a spiritual contact that has nothing of a human nature about it, where there is nothing of a personal gain or loss on either side, where there is no money involved, no name or fame or fortune, where there is nothing but a touch of the Spirit existing, there is a strength. There is the bond that is unbreakable. That was the original intent of the statement that what God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. It was a little mistake probably in translation because the statement never read that way. The statement correctly voiced is, that which God has joined together, no man can put asunder. Let some man try it. No, that which God has joined together, no man can put it. Not any nation of men, not any world of men can ever tear apart that which God has joined together. So as soon as there is a union between Father and Son, God the Father, God the Son, as soon as there is a conscious union between 2 people spiritually, purely in the Spirit, there is where you will find the entire strength of the Spirit, the entire healing power, the entire supplying power, the entire protective power is right there. Now, another point to bring up is to call your attention to this. There are two important things to learn in this class. One is that there is such a thing as cosmic law. The second thing, no part of that first thing, what constitutes cosmic law? And then the second thing is how to live so as to bring cosmic law into one's experience. There is a cosmic law, that we know. The next thing is what constitutes cosmic law, and then how do we live so as to bring cosmic law into our experience so that we are one with it and that it is governing our experience. And that is what we must bring out of this classwork. Now, sometimes there are students who feel that the moment they take up the study, or within a year or two anyhow, they should have accomplished the land of milk and honey. They should have entered the promised land. And after that, there's nothing to it but sitting on cloud 8 or 9. Of course, that has never happened to anyone. And so we ought to understand that. We ought to know that. And we ought to know that the goal is very close to us, and yet as close as it is far away, because it is achieved only with some difficulties. And just this week, this poem was sent to me by Odell Shepard, and I thought it again brings to light the fact that even though every step of our way finds us achieving an horizon, we must never forget that with every horizon there'll be another one just out there a little bit. I shall not ever find that far-off vale of shadowy solitude where beauty dwells, wherever all day long cloud castles sail and moving waters glass the dim harebells. I shall not ever walk in that fair place, though I may seek it many a happy year. I shall but dream of her most lovely face, her golden song I shall but faintly hear. Yet there will be a memory in the hills, and calls and echoes, leafy whispering, will stir the unforgetting daffodils, and forest boughs mysteriously a-swing. Wherefore I follow still, from dawn to dawn, greatly content where her swift feet have gone. And so we're going forward in this, what we may think of as a quest, as a search, and as we do, let us remember we can know our progress by this, that every once in a while we see a horizon out here, and we have the feeling, oh, I've just a little way to go. When I get this next point, I'll be there. And so we have that horizon as our goal. And you know, it only takes a few days or weeks, and all of a sudden we come to that horizon and we see the whole world of spirit spread before us, and we really believe we've entered the entire kingdom of heaven. And we have for a few days, and then all of a sudden we get used to this light, and we begin to notice just one more horizon over there that has to be traveled. Just one more step, and we'll be there. But I'm still finding horizons. But that's one of the joys of this thing. I don't know what it would be like to ever get there and not find another horizon. I'm no hurry to find out. I enjoy these horizons. Well, we know that the first commandment is a cosmic law, that we are to have no powers but God, that we are not to put our faith in princes, we're not to trust creatures or creation, but that our realization must always be that the Father within us, the infinite invisible, is our life, our soul, our supply, our fortress, our high tower. And we know that every time we look to a person or a thing or a circumstance or condition as if it were a power, we are violating a cosmic law, and we will pay a penalty for it. Now we also know that next to that commandment in importance is love thy neighbor as thyself. And we know that that fits in with do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Now, these are not merely bits of advice on how to live well. These are statements of a cosmic law which, when not obeyed, become double-edged swords and strike back at us. So we know there is a law. It's not a teaching, it's not a philosophy, it's not a religion. It's an actual cosmic law. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And we have no choice as to whether or not we will obey them. We either obey them or get cut down. There is no getting away from these laws. We have been disobedient to them, certainly, but we've paid the penalty for it. And we know now that these are not statements of choice, these are statements of law. Laws that are in existence, that are as inexorable as the laws of electricity. You all know that if you hook up electricity incorrectly, you can get a lot of trouble from it. You all know that when you violate laws of nature, there is a penalty to be paid. And this law of the first commandment, this law of loving thy neighbor as thyself, these are cosmic laws. And they must be obeyed. When they are not obeyed, they bring back the penalty upon us. The question comes in, of course, as to how we are to love our neighbor, or what constitutes loving our neighbor, and that comes in a later explanation. We had, was it the 8th or 9th commandment? Not to bear false witness against thy neighbor. And we were shown so clearly that that does not necessarily mean just do not spread rumors about your neighbor or gossip about your neighbor, but to not bear witness against your neighbor means not to hold your neighbor in humanhood. Understand that Christ is the soul of your neighbor, whether or not your neighbor is a good neighbor or a bad neighbor, whether your neighbor is a friendly neighbor or an enemy neighbor, whether or not the neighbor is close to you or all the way across the seas. The point is that we are not dealing with just turning around and saying, oh, my friends over here are fine people, even though we don't believe so. It has nothing to do with just holding them in good reputation as against bad reputation. It means actually not seeing them either as good or as evil. It means beholding them only as spiritual being. There is the point to remember. The infinite way does not deal at all with good humanhood in and of itself. It deals entirely with understanding the spiritual values and realities and letting the good humanhood be the added or natural thing that follows. In other words, it wouldn't be an easy thing to understand that our neighbor is Christ and then pick a fight with him. So you see that the good humanhood is just a natural consequence of spiritual identification. It would be an impossibility to say Christ is the soul of individual being. Christ is the very life of my friend or my enemy, and then turn around and gossip or rumor or slander. You see, that can't be. So this is not a correction of one's human conduct. This is the adoption of a spiritual code which automatically results in a good humanhood. So we start first, not with the good humanhood, we come to that in the second part, but we start first with the spiritual values. So by saying that we place all of our faith and trust and confidence in the infinite invisible, in that moment we are not considering human circumstances or conditions. Later, when we come to the human circumstances and conditions, we see it in its relationship to that first commandment. In the same way, when we say, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, and we're not talking now of any human love or affection or friendliness, we are talking now about holding our neighbor in spiritual identity. Then later we come to see how that is carried out in the human picture. So it is that we have all through Scripture the revelation of these cosmic laws. But the Master, after giving us these laws, also gave us a code of human conduct which we could follow while training ourselves to that spiritual or cosmic consciousness, and he gave us a guide that covers almost every act of our daily living. And we find the beginning of that in the 5th chapter of Matthew. And seeing the multitudes, he went up into a mountain, and when he was set, his disciples came unto him. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you, and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely, for my sake. Rejoice, and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. Now here, all down the line, we have these blesseds are you. Of course, in the Old Testament, it was always damned are you if you don't. Thou shalt not, or else. Here we have the blessed art thou, and we are given the actual, you might call it, code of conduct. Blessed are the poor in spirit. the humble, the meek. Blessed are those really who follow his work of declaring, I can of my own self do nothing, it is the Father within me that doeth the work, or holding themselves as he did, a servant of man rather than a master. And blessed are the merciful. It is just as much as if he were to say in Old Testament language or our language, you shall be merciful or you shall not be unmerciful. But rather he puts it in that beautiful language of, blessed art thou if you are merciful. In other words, you watch the cosmic law there. The cosmic law is love. Cosmic law is only fulfilled through love. Love is the fulfilling of cosmic law. And there is your love. There is how to love. To be poor in spirit, to be meek, to be lowly, to hunger and thirst after righteousness, to be merciful, to be pure in heart, to be peacemakers. That is to hold oneself in line with cosmic law, because cosmic law is fulfilled only through love. Never forget that there is no other way to be in tune with the infinite, or to be in harmony with cosmic law, or to be in union with cosmic law, except through love. And here you have a whole list of things showing what constitutes love. Ye are the salt of the earth. But if the salt have lost his savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is henceforth good for nothing but to be cast out. He says, ye are the salt of the earth. Yes, but if you have lost your love, what then becomes of the salt? What becomes of the value? What becomes of the substance? Ye are the salt of the earth, if herein you have followed these blesseds. Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Ye are the light of the world. Who is the ye? These blesseds over here. The merciful, the kind, the just, the lowly, the meek, the righteous, those who are hungering for righteousness, they are the light of the world. Now, when you are a light of the world, of course you can't be hid. We have said that here before, that the moment this spirit touches one, you never have to voice it. You never have to say it, but all of a sudden it is known to those who are reaching out for it. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Again, there's your code of conduct. Let your light so shine. In other words, let these qualities, these blessed qualities, so permeate our being that they are seen of men. When they are seen of men, they do not glorify us. They glorify the Father, which really is the activity of these qualities in us. Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled. And you may be assured of that. Cosmic law cannot be defied. Cosmic law cannot be subverted. And the penalty or consequence of violating cosmic law cannot be averted. There is no way. And not one change will take place in this until the day comes when it is no longer necessary for us to be told what code of conduct we shall follow, when it shall be a constituted part of our consciousness and we will need no more teachings like this 5th chapter of Matthew, when it is no longer necessary to say to us that we shall be merciful, kind, or just, then there will be no longer any occasion for the law. Whosoever, therefore, shall break one of these least commandments, and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. And so it is that as we are one with this cosmic law, and it fulfills itself, then are we understood to be in alignment with God, with the Christ. For I say unto you, that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. There you have really one of the basic points in the infinite way, in that it makes no difference how good you are as a human being. It makes no difference how pure, how honest, how just, kind, or merciful you are as a human. That is not enough to gain entry to the spiritual kingdom. In other words, it is not sufficient to bring you into oneness with cosmic law. You can be as good as you want humanly, but unless you have that spiritual realization that shows you Christ, so that your conduct, your entire consciousness is in alignment with Christ, that is spiritual good, then and then only is it possible to be at one with cosmic law. Now remember, it is certainly better to be a good human than a bad one, just as it is better to be a healthy human than to be a sick human. But achieving goodness and achieving health in and of themselves is not spiritual demonstration. Spiritual demonstration only comes when we have risen above the human good and realized I am not a good human or a bad human. Christ is my identity. Or when we look out upon the world and stop seeing good men and women and bad men and women and recognizing Christ alone as the reality of being, then are you in tune with cosmic law. Only then, only when you are acknowledging Christ dependence or God dependence, only when your faith is more in the invisible than on anyone or anything in the visible, only then are you attaining oneness with cosmic law. Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you, that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. I don't know who put in there that without a cause. But I am certain of one thing, that somebody put it in there, and not the master. The master could not have expected anyone to be under cosmic law and to be angry with his brother even for a cause. And you'll see that later, that he allowed no cause whatsoever for anger. That is an interpretation there of somebody who couldn't quite live up to the fullness of that meaning. And you'll see it will be revealed just a little bit later. Oh, don't have to wait very long either. Therefore, if thou bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother hath aught against thee, leave there thy gift before the altar, and go thy way. First be reconciled to thy brother, and then come and offer thy gift. Now there's nothing in that about a cause. It just states and it means if you are holding anybody in your condemnation as a human being, a bad one, a good one, a just one, an unjust one, you are not yet ready for the spiritual prayer of communion with the infinite. It is only as you can rise above the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees and stop seeing good and bad and stop boasting about goodness as if any one of us could be good if we wanted to be, when goodness is a quality and an activity of God alone, and because it is universal. To see anything else, to accept anything else, is to prevent the operation of cosmic prayer, of prayer in a cosmic sense. The very moment you have a shadow across your soul, you have got something coming between you and God. And anything can cause a shadow that, and an interference or a hindrance that refuses to see spirit alone as the creative principle and the effect. Only as we see God as cause and spiritual man alone as effect, only then do we go to the altar and pray purely. Well, now, those of you who have ever done any healing work already know that this is true. You couldn't take your go to prayer or treatment and say, I have a sick patient and now we are coming to you to make him well. No, you can't ever, in metaphysics, treat from the standpoint that you have a sick patient or a sinful patient or a poor patient or a dying patient or a dead one. You can't do that. There is no such thing as a metaphysical treatment that doesn't begin and end with the realization of God. No. In some of the mental sciences, and as you know, the mental science movement has decreased 90% in 30 years. And that is about a good estimate of its success. Why has it failed? And why is it as complete a failure as it is today, what little is left of it? For this reason, they can't heal. And why can't they heal? The few healings they do have are more or less accidental. Why can't they heal? For the simple reason they start with the premise that there is a mental cause for a physical disease. And so they're acknowledging the physical disease and the mental cause. You can't heal that way. Never could, never will. Because the premise is cosmically incorrect. When you pray, you must actually know that Christ is the identity of the individual. Now, the individual who comes to you for help, not knowing their true identity at the moment or having forgotten it for a second, may say to you, I am ill, I am poor, I am unemployed, I am dying, I am sinful. That's legitimate. They have accepted a sense of separation from God. They have accepted themselves as human beings. But if you accept it and say, oh God, I've got a terribly sick person here, now what are we going to do? That is the blind leading the blind. Now your prayer, spiritual prayer, is going to have no value. And the best thing to do, if you accept that your patient or student is sick or poor or anything else of a negative or human nature, the best thing to do before you give your treatment is forget your patient, get back and make peace with them by remembering, oh, Father, forgive me. Father, forgive me. This soul is your soul. This individual is very Christ being. And then when you have made your peace and established the true identity, then you may go and pray. Now again, never forget this point in the message of the infinite way. You do not have a mental cause for a physical disease. Remember that just as you have already acknowledged that there are no physical causes for physical disease, don't make the mistake of having a mental cause for a physical disease, because you will have a disease. And that's the very point on which spiritual truth is founded, that disease has no reality. Oh yes, I don't mean that it doesn't exist. It does exist. It exists as a universal belief in our thought and in our body. But that doesn't say that it has reality. Remember, if it had reality, you couldn't dispel it. You couldn't heal it. You couldn't cure it. Remember, if disease had a law, there would be no way to cure it. The only thing that makes disease curable on the physical realm, or mental, or spiritual, is that it has no law to sustain it. Anything that has a law to sustain it would be eternal, and the law would be there upholding it forever and forever and forever. Nothing you could do about it would break that law. But because it hasn't a law, it has only the substance of universal belief or acceptance. For that reason, you can destroy it. Now, you can't destroy it as an entity by making it real or giving it a cause, any more than you could remove the water from the desert by acknowledging there was water there. No, the only way you can remove that water from the desert is with your understanding that there never had been water there, and that it only existed as mirage. And so it is when you are dealing with your healing work. Be sure of this part of the 5th chapter of Matthew. Don't ever accept a human being into your consciousness who needs improvement, who needs healing, who needs enriching, employing. Never, 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 because you're an enemy of that person instead of a friend. You're holding him down in the level of their own belief, instead of, if I be lifted up, I shall lift all men under my consciousness. Now, if you have in your thought any man or woman or child that you believe to be sick, sinning, poor, mortal, human, aged, dying, don't do any praying until you have made peace with that brother. Get inside and ask your own forgiveness first of all, so that you never again make the mistake of sitting in judgment on any individual, because everyone is God in expression. All is God manifested. All is God appearing as. God alone constitutes this universe. God constitutes the life, the mind, the soul of this universe, and it would be the blind leading of the blind if you attempt to help anyone while accepting the belief of their humanhood. Now, of course, I repeat this over and over again because it is one of the things that separated me from my old teachings. It was one of those things that separated me from all of the constituted metaphysical teachings. The fact that wherever you look, you will find that if you have rheumatism, it's probably because you're resentful. And if you have tuberculosis, it is because you are lustful. And if you have cancer, it is because you are hateful or envious or jealous. Now, that would all be very beautiful if the pattern always worked out that way. But even in the human picture, it doesn't. From the spiritual standpoint, never, never can you first agree that an individual is mortal or human and then start to bring about their spirituality, because it cannot be accomplished. It cannot be done. Always remember your prayers are of no avail, as long as you have aught against your brother or he has aught against you. And you always have something against your brother if you think he's a human being. Never forget that. Agree with thine adversary quickly, whiles thou art in the way with him, lest at any time the adversary deliver thee to the judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officer, and thou be cast into prison. And that, of course, refers, from the metaphysical interpretation, to the fact that when you are faced with what is called an adversary, do not accept it as an adversary, because the moment you start to work against it, it will devour you. The moment you start to remove it, or heal it, or rise above it, that goes back to what I've just been saying, that if you do accept a condition apart from God, in the end it's going to get you. You are not going to be victor over it. It is only when, in spite of any appearance, that you can agree that there's no power in this adversary. Thou couldst have no power over me unless it came from the Father within, the Father in heaven. Unless you can agree that there is no presence on earth, no power on earth, opposed to good, in opposition to good, that there is no presence and no power apart from God, you cannot agree with this teaching in Matthew 5. You must come to see. Now, of course, here again, let me remind you, when you agree with our adversary, in other words, stop fighting with him, don't oppose him, you're again coming back to cosmic law. You're coming back to cosmic law of the first commandment, that there is no other power but God. Now, if there's no other power but God, why fight? Why fight? Why battle error if there is no other power apart from God? Well, ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you, that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. Well, again, you have here the human conduct, but it is a human conduct only because there is a cosmic law involved. In other words, just the act of either looking upon or committing is not the offense. That is only the result of the violation of the cosmic law. The cosmic law is spirit. Spirit is all. Now, the moment you have any other thought than that, you are in violation of the cosmic law. Whether you merely have a mental desire or whether you carry out a physical act, it is all the same thing. You've already broken the cosmic law of the recognition of spirit as all, or the cosmic law of do unto your neighbor as you would have your neighbor do unto you. Anytime you break those laws, the rest is only the outward carrying out of what has already been done within. So remember, again, the violation of human codes in and of themselves is not the sin. The sin is the violation of the cosmic law which is behind the particular sin. Is that clear? It better had be.